There's something about long, open highways that makes you feel invincible, like the rest of the world disappears beyond your headlights and the road is yours alone. That's probably why road trips feel so freeing until something decides to follow you. Most people think horror waits at old houses or in the woods, but sometimes it's pacing behind your car, mile after mile, waiting for you to stop. This story belongs to a man named Daniel Mercer, who took what was supposed to be a routine cross-country drive. He never made it home the same. Some argue he never made it home at all. It started just past dusk on an empty stretch of Highway 191 in Utah. Daniel had been driving for over 8 hours, headed from Moab back to Denver. The sky was bleeding orange and purple as the sun sank below the desert cliffs, painting the landscape with a haunting kind of beauty. He rolled down the windows to let the dry air in, turned up his music, and focused on the road. Everything was fine until he noticed the car behind him. At first, he didn't think much of it. A pair of headlights about a quarter-mile back, normal for a lonely highway. But something felt off. The car never seemed to get closer. No matter how fast or slow he drove, it kept the exact same distance. Daniel thought maybe the other driver was just being cautious. It wasn't until 30 minutes passed with no exits, no towns, and the same car in his rearview mirror that unease began to build. He tapped the brakes lightly to signal, hoping the car might pass him. It didn't. He flicked his turn signal and veered slightly to the shoulder, pretending to stop. The headlights stopped too. Now fully alert, Daniel felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. He waited a moment before pulling back onto the road. The car resumed pace, same distance as before, like it was tethered to him. He reached for his phone to call someone, but the screen displayed no service. Of course. Out here, cell reception was practically a myth. As darkness swallowed the landscape, the other car finally disappeared. No sound, no headlights, nothing. Just gone. Daniel scanned his mirrors, slowing down, squinting into the black. Then he saw movement in the back seat. It was faint, just a shadow, a shifting silhouette like someone ducking out of view. He whipped his head around. Nothing. The back seat was empty. At least it looked empty. But Daniel wasn't so sure anymore. "I need a break," he muttered, pulling off at the first rest stop he saw, a faded sign reading San Juan Viewpoint, 1 mile. The place was desolate, a small gravel loop with an outhouse, a rusted picnic table, and a viewing platform overlooking the pitch-black desert. No other cars, no lights, just him and the whisper of wind through sagebrush. He parked, killed the engine, and stepped out. Silence wrapped around him like a shroud. He stretched, cracked his neck, and stared out at the nothingness. The stars were painfully bright, too many, too close. And then, a click, the sound of his car door opening behind him. Daniel turned quickly. The driver's side door was wide open. He hadn't left it that way. The air inside the car had shifted, thicker, colder. A strange smell lingered, like wet earth and metal. He scanned the interior. Still nothing there. But when he reached to close the door, he saw it. A handprint on the inside of the rear window. Small, greasy. Fingers splayed out unnaturally wide. Daniel slammed the door shut, heart pounding. He got back in, locked everything, and peeled out of the rest stop like something was chasing him. Because something was. That's when the real horror began. About 20 minutes down the road, Daniel felt the temperature drop drastically inside the car. The windshield began to fog from the inside. He adjusted the vents, but it didn't help. The cold clung to him. Then came the whisper. It started in the back seat, low, garbled, like someone speaking underwater. He froze, too afraid to look in the mirror. But the whisper grew louder, clearer. "Don't turn around." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Keep driving," it said. A deep chill spread from the base of his spine. This couldn't be real. He hadn't slept. Maybe he was hallucinating. And then something tapped on the back of his headrest. Deliberately. Slowly. Daniel let out a strangled cry and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop in the middle of the road. He scrambled out, panting, staring at the vehicle like it might come alive. The door behind him creaked open. But no one got out. No one had to. Because whatever was in his car wasn't something that needed to use a door. Something had come in with him, and it hadn't left. And now, standing on that empty road under a moonless sky, Daniel realized something horrifying. His shadow was no longer his own. There was a second shadow beside him, though he stood alone. You never expect evil to ride shotgun, but sometimes it climbs into your back seat without a sound, uninvited, unseen, until it's too late. It all started with a road trip that was supposed to fix everything. Mark and Jenna had been together for 5 years, and things were tense. They needed a break. Not a break from each other, but a break from the daily grind, the constant arguing, the creeping silence in their apartment. So they packed up Jenna's old Subaru, loaded it with snacks, playlists, and a cooler full of hope, and set off across the Pacific Northwest, mountains, forests, and empty roads stretching ahead like an unwritten future. The first few days were uneventful. A couple of Airbnbs, cheap roadside diners, lots of driving and silence broken only by the occasional, "Where do you want to stop next?" It wasn't healing anything, not yet, but it was motion, and motion felt like progress. Then they found the cabin. It wasn't planned, just a last-minute booking after their motel reservation in northern Washington fell through. Jenna stumbled across it on a sketchy rental site. No reviews, just a few grainy pictures of an old wooden cabin buried in the woods. Rustic charm, the listing said. Mark wasn't thrilled, but they were already low on gas, and the sun was setting behind a wall of evergreens. They booked it. The road to the cabin narrowed with each mile, turning from asphalt to gravel to packed dirt. By the time they reached the gate, a rusted iron arch with no name, only a symbol etched into the wood post, they were more than 2 hours from the last town. The cabin was smaller than the pictures. Creaky floorboards, moth-eaten curtains, a smell like old leaves and forgotten rain. But it was dry, quiet, and it had one bedroom, one bed. That night the silence stretched again, thick and brittle between them. Jenna lay in bed, scrolling through her phone. Mark sat at the tiny table by the window, looking out into the black tangle of trees. He thought he saw something out there once, a shape between the branches. Tall, still, watching. But when he blinked, it was gone. He didn't say anything. At 2:37 a.m., Jenna whispered, "Mark, are you awake?" His eyes snapped open. He hadn't realized he'd fallen asleep. "Yeah, what is it?" She didn't answer right away. Her voice was low, careful. "Do you feel like someone's in the room?" Mark froze. Not, "Is someone in the house?" but in the room. He listened. No footsteps, no creaking floorboards, just the faint hum of the wind against the windows. "There's nothing," he said, though he wasn't sure. Jenna turned to him slowly, her eyes wide in the dim moonlight. "I saw something in the corner, a shadow, but it wasn't mine. It was standing." Mark sat up. His heart pounded, slow and heavy. "You were dreaming." "I wasn't asleep." He looked to the corner she pointed at. There was nothing there. But the air was colder now. They slept with the lights on. The next morning they agreed. Time to go? Mark packed while Jenna made coffee, her hands shaking as she poured. She wouldn't look at the corner, not even once. It was then Mark noticed something chilling. When he closed the bedroom door behind him, their shadows stretched across the floor from the morning light, filtering through the cracked window. But there were 3 shadows, His, Jenna's, and one more, still, tall, thin, lingering a second too long before it twitched and vanished. He didn't tell Jenna. They left without breakfast, speeding down the narrow road with gravel flying behind them like sparks. The deeper they drove into the forest, the worse the GPS signal got. Eventually, the map app froze completely. Mark gripped the wheel tighter. Then the car sputtered. The gas gauge, which had shown a quarter tank just 10 minutes ago, now hovered just above empty. Impossible, Mark muttered. They rolled to a stop in a clearing. No cell signal, no road signs, just endless pine trees and the oppressive quiet that pressed on their ears like cotton soaked in static. Mark got out to check the engine. Jenna stayed inside, gripping the armrest, eyes darting to the side mirror. And that's when she saw it. A shadow standing behind the car. Not a person, a shadow. Human-shaped but hollow, like something wearing a memory. No eyes, no face. Just an outline, and the awful sense that it was looking straight at her. Jenna screamed. Mark turned, but there was nothing there. No shadow, no prints, just the breeze in the trees and the sense that something had moved. They sat in the car for nearly an hour, waiting for something, anything, to change. Eventually, the engine started without reason. The gas gauge flickered back to a quarter tank, and the GPS map, working again as if nothing had ever happened. They drove in silence. You ever notice how a road trip can shift from freedom to fear in an instant? That stretch of asphalt under a wide sky promises escape, adventure, until it doesn't. Until it carries you straight into something you can't explain, something that follows you back. 3 months ago, my friend Milo and I left for a week-long road trip across the Pacific Northwest. Just two guys, no set plans, just forests, gas station coffee, and late-night playlists. But something happened that made me wish we never left our hometown. It started somewhere outside of Mount Rainier. We'd driven through heavy fog for hours, and night had fallen hard. Milo found this isolated cabin rental through an app. Cheap, no reviews, and supposedly nestled just off the main trail. In hindsight, I should have questioned why it was so cheap. When we pulled up, the fog swallowed everything behind us. The cabin looked like it had been dropped in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by silent pine trees and no other houses in sight. There were no lights, not even from the windows, just a pale reflection of the moon on the front door's window pane. Inside, it was rustic. A single hallway split the cabin in two, one bedroom on each side, a bathroom in between. The air smelled like old wood and damp earth. Milo went to drop his bag, and I followed suit, tired from the drive and ready to crash. That night, I woke up to a creaking sound. I figured it was just the cabin settling, but then I heard soft footsteps, slow, careful, pacing the hallway. At first, I thought it was Milo, maybe going to the bathroom, but the sound never reached the door. It just moved back and forth. For minutes. I got up, cracked open my door, and peeked out. The hallway was empty, just shadows stretching from the edges of a dim wall sconce. I called out, "Milo?" No response. When I checked his room, he was fast asleep, earbuds in, snoring softly. But as I turned to head back to bed, something caught my eye. There was a shadow against the far wall, human-shaped, still, but it didn't belong to anything. Nothing cast it. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, turned on the light switch. Nothing. The bulb flickered, then stayed dead. The shadow didn't move, not even when I stepped closer. I wanted to touch it, to see if it was some trick of the light, but the hallway suddenly grew colder. The hairs on my arms stood straight up. A pressure filled the space, like something heavy was standing right behind me. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, the shadow was gone. I convinced myself I was just exhausted. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. Maybe that fourth gas station energy drink messed me up. I returned to bed, pulled the covers over my head like a child, and forced myself to sleep. Morning came bright and still. Milo made coffee, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. I didn't mention the shadow. I didn't want to sound crazy. We left the cabin later that day, drove east toward Spokane. But as the days passed, I noticed something strange happening in every motel we stayed in. No matter where we went, I'd wake up at exactly 3:12 a.m., and I'd always see a shadow in the room. Not one that moved, not one that made noise. But it was there, lingering in the corner, or leaning near the closet, or crouched just outside the bathroom door. Always humanoid, always still, always wrong. I tried to rationalize it, bad dreams, stress, paranoia. But one night I finally broke down and told Milo. He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He looked pale, and he said, "You see it too?" Turns out he'd been seeing it every night since the cabin as well. Same time, same presence, a shadow that doesn't belong. That's when we realized we didn't leave something behind. We brought it with us. We cut the road trip short, drove 16 hours straight to get home. No stops, no music, just silence and fear. And the entire way we kept seeing shapes in our rearview mirrors, flickers in the corner of our eyes. We thought maybe once we were home it'd go away, that it was attached to the cabin or the road, but it followed us. Now I wake up at 3:12 a.m. in my own bed. Every single night, there's a shadow in my room, standing near my closet, never moving, never speaking. And here's the worst part. When I try to turn on the light, it doesn't work. Just like in the cabin. I've tried to record it, tried to catch it in a photo. But my phone glitches out. The screen goes black. I asked Milo if it's still happening to him. He hasn't replied in 2 days. Last message he sent just said, "It got closer." Now I sleep with my back to the wall. Because there's one thing I've learned, don't turn around. Not unless you're ready to see it looking back.